Good afternoon and welcome to today's telephone town hall with Congressman Joe Heck and the National Association of Realtors. My name is Jordan Bennett and I'll be the moderator for today's event. We will begin in just a moment and we're excited to have you all join us today. Before we begin, a few quick points to make. Right now, we're in the process of dialing out to thousands of members, so just stay on the line and we'll be hearing from Congressman Heck shortly. Also, we want to hear from you. If you would like to ask a question of Congressman Heck, please press 0 on your telephone keypad and you'll be connected directly to one of our volunteers. Again, press 0 to ask a question. If you've just joined us, good afternoon and welcome to today's telephone town hall with Congressman Joe Heck and the National Association of Realtors. I'm Jordan Bennett and I'll be the moderator for today's event. We're going to begin in just a moment. Thanks for joining us. Right now we're in the process of dialing out to thousands of members, so just stay on the line and we'll hear from Congressman Heck and the association shortly. If you want to ask a question of Congressman Heck, please press 0 at any time during the event. Again, press 0 at any time during the telephone town hall to ask a question. And without further delay, here is Congressman Heck. Congressman?
Hey, well, thanks, Jordan, and thanks, everybody, for taking the time to join on today's call being sponsored by the Association of Realtors to talk about housing issues and other issues that are currently before Congress. Since taking office in 2011, housing issues have been a major focus of mine both in Nevada and in Washington. As everyone on this call knows, our housing market in southern Nevada took a devastating hit during the recession, and I don't know if anybody saw, but there was a recent article, actually the article was today in USA Today, talking about how housing price growth has already started to slow in the second quarter year over year, showing that the Las Vegas Paradise area is now at a 14.2% change from 2013 with a median price of $196,200. So I knew that with so many of my constituents losing their homes or being fearful of losing their homes, housing casework was going to be one of the largest focuses of my district office. So in order to be able to meet those concerns, I actually hired a former realtor, someone who actually knew the market and had the connections to help people navigate the complicated landscape of housing finance and federal housing programs. And many of you on the call know and have probably worked with Sherry Furman in my office. She took on quite a task when she came on board, but her dedication and hard work have helped many people who had given up hope. And I consider helping families stay in their homes among our office's greatest achievements. So many times I'll be out to dinner with my wife or walking through the shopping center and somebody will come up to me and say, hey, aren't you Congressman Joe Heck? And at first you always take a step back because you wonder what they're going to say next. But then they'll turn around and say, you know, Sherry in your office really helped us out. We were about to get foreclosed on. The bank wouldn't work with us. We called your office. Sherry got involved and now we refinanced. Or we were having trouble getting our short sale process. We reached out. And now we have been able to short sell our home. So, of course, the state of the housing market is driven in part by federal policy coming out of Washington. So my goal is to try to do things that will help our housing market and to stay away from things that will make our housing market even more difficult. So I've worked to ensure that legislation that I support and introduced relating to the housing issues have a meaningful impact right here at home. In fact, among the first votes I cast as a member of the House back in 2011 was to maintain the FHA's refinance program and the Home Affordable Modification Program, while most members of my party wanted to terminate them. My justification was simple. The programs were helping people in my district. At the time, we were leading the nation in the number of foreclosures, and so the programs may have needed reform, but terminating them and just cutting them out, lock, stock, and barrel, I thought would have adversely affected the people that I represented. Now, sometimes in Washington, you hear the phrase that had to take a tough vote to describe when a member votes the opposite way as most of his or her party. Well, there's nothing tough about those votes for me. When it comes to deciding between my constituents and party loyalty, I'll always stand with the folks that I represent. I joined a bipartisan coalition of House members in introducing legislation that helps make the American dream of home ownership attainable for those who are saving for their first home. And I know this is important because I remember growing up and the pride that my parents felt when they finally were able to save up enough for their down payment on our first home. Prior to that, we were renting a one-bedroom basement apartment from my aunt. So the bill, the Creating Home Ownership Opportunity Act, creates a tax-advantaged savings program similar to a health savings account for the purpose of building up equity in the purchase of a first home. So people can put away money tax-deferred and then take that money out and use it as a down payment on their first home. In addition, I introduced the Mortgage Forgiveness Tax Relief Act, which would extend for 2 additional years the relief from taxes on the shadow income that results from mortgage debt forgiveness. As you know, the last extension is scheduled to expire this year, December 31st. We're hoping to get this included again for at least one more year, hopefully for 2 years, because I think that's how much time we need for our housing market to settle down. And then finally, the best thing we can do for the housing market is to get more people back to work in good-paying jobs so that they have the money to go out and buy a home. And that remains my top priority in Congress because if we really want to get the housing market back on track, people have to be willing to go out and take the risk of buying a home, and they're not going to do that if they're not in a good-paying job. So I look forward to discussing these and other issues on today's call. And with that, we can take our first question. As Jordan said in the intro, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please push a 0 on your telephone keypad.
You're right. So everyone, if you do have a question to ask tonight, please press 0 on your telephone keypad, and you'll be directed to one of our operators who can take that question for you. So the first question, we have Ray from Keller Williams, Southern Nevada. Ray, you're on the line.
Yes, Mr. Hecht. I'd like to ask you why they extended the short sale to refinance up to 4 years when it used to be 2 years for you to be able to finance a home.
I'm sorry, say that again, Ray. I'm sorry, I missed the question.
On the short sale, when you go to qualify for, after you have a short sale on your record, it takes you 4 years. It used to be 2 years. Now it's 4 years before you can qualify to get a home, to be able to qualify for financing.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what the reason was why the regulatory agencies did that. It certainly was not done through Congress, and we're working, and in fact have had meetings with the local realtors and the mortgage brokers to talk about trying to get that brought back down to 2 years. I don't know, what the reasoning was behind doing that at the regulatory level, but we need to address it. Next question.
Perfect. So our next question comes from Carol in Las Vegas. Carol, you're on the air.
Yes. I'm working with a foreign investor who wants to build a manufacturing site in North Las Vegas or Las Vegas. They're going to be bringing parts from Japan, from China, and putting them together here. Are there any incentives for foreign investors to bring jobs to Las Vegas?
Well, Carol, good question. I think there are certain programs that can be looked at through the Governor's Office of Economic Development, similar to what they did for Tesla. But as far as the biggest, I think, one is the ability to get EB-5 visas for people that want to come here and invest money and start a business. But there are no federal incentives to give to a foreign corporation to come here to build a factory. It's all done at the state and local level with tax abatements or things along those lines.
Okay. So that you're speaking of GOED?
Right. So you've got the Governor's Office of Economic Development, and then you also have the Las Vegas Global Economic Committee, or it's another entity that's a nonprofit that's located down here off of 215 and Jones. So they're a nonprofit that work to bring companies here, but GOED, the governor's office, is the primary one that would have to wicker any deal to provide tax abatements or incentives.
Perfect. So great question, Carol. Remember, folks, if you have a question you'd like to ask tonight, press 0 on your telephone's keypad, and you'll be directly connected to one of our operators who can help you out. Again, press 0 on your keypad if you'd like to ask a question. Our next question comes from Phil in Las Vegas. Phil, you're on the air.
Hey, Joe, Phil Perrine. How are you?
Hey, Phil. Good, Phil. How are you?
Good. Like you mentioned in the beginning, the Mortgage Debt Forgiveness Act, which expired the end of last year, and what are the prospects for it being extended for this year and for next year?
Well, I think a lot's going to be determined based on what happens in the month of November, in early November. But I think there's a large amount of support from across the country from members that find themselves in districts with similar situations like we have here. So there are several of us pushing to get it reinstituted, at least for this year, if not for the 2 years like the bill that I had introduced. But again, it's right now it's hard to predict what's going to come out of the lame duck session. There'll be what's called a tax extender package that looks at a lot of the different expiring tax credits. One of the other ones that's expiring, for instance, here in Southern Nevada is the ability to deduct sales tax from your federal income tax. That's another one that's going to expire. So there's usually a package of tax extenders that comes together towards the end of the year, and we're going to push to make sure the best we can that the mortgage debt forgiveness is included in that package.
So our next question is from Brenda in Henderson. Brenda, you're on the air.
Hi, I was just wondering if you're hearing anything about tax reform taking place this Congress, and if you think mortgage interest deduction is on the table this year.
I don't think it's going to happen this year, Brenda. So as many of you may know, the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, Dave Camp, working with his counterpart in the Senate, introduced kind of a template or a blueprint for comprehensive tax reform. Obviously, when it came out, just about everybody's ox was getting gored. So it's basically being used as a starting point for discussion. But I sincerely doubt, I would just say with almost 99.9% certainty that we're not going to see tax reform take place this year. But it is something that's been talked about already for the 114th Congress, which will convene in January of 2015. And one of the things that's always been talked about is mortgage interest deduction, whether it's lowering the cap from $1 million maybe down to $500,000. But I think this will pose a concern, I think, certainly for folks that have a stagnant housing market. And my position has always been that while we want to get rid of tax deductions or incentives or loopholes for special interests, things that everybody has an opportunity to participate in or benefit from are the things that we should actually keep. And for me, that would include being able to, save and buy a home. So again, I don't think I would say with almost near certainty tax reform is not going to happen this year. It is on the agenda for next year, and I would say that the mortgage interest deduction will be something that will be discussed. And again, whether it's a complete phase out or a bringing down the cap remains to be seen.
Perfect. Great question. So folks, just remember, press 0 on your telephone keypad if you'd like to ask a question. Again, that's 0 on your keypad to ask a question. Our next question comes from Michelle. Michelle, you're live on the air.
Yes, my name is Michelle Chauvin with iRealty Properties here in Henderson, and my question is about the ballot in October or November about question 3, and wanted to know your ideas on that. Basically, it's a proposed margin tax of 2% off the gross income on small businesses.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Michelle, and one I think is really on many, if not all, small businesses' minds, because once you cross that, as the way the ballot's worded, the question is worded, that once you cross the $1 million threshold on gross income, you're going to be subjected to the tax on all that. So if you go 1 million and one, you're going to be taxed 2% on the 1 million and one, not just the one over the million. And the issue that I see in the drafting of the ballot is that although the question does say that the money raised is supposed to go to the distributed school account, parenthetically to fund education, there's nothing that would prevent the legislature from saying, okay, well, if that much money went into the DSA from the tax, what we would put into the DSA we'll keep out of the, from the general fund and spend elsewhere. So there's no guarantee that you would actually see increased funding for schools, because the legislature could simply say, you raised so much money from this that went into the account, so we're going to keep that money from the general fund and spend it elsewhere. And I know that many small businesses are concerned about this. I think there are a couple of potential deductions that you could get from that 1 million, like your gross payroll. But as you've seen, whether it's the Las Vegas Chamber, the Henderson Chamber, all the chambers are very concerned about this, and I think rightfully so.
Great. So remember, folks, press 0 on your keypad to ask a question. Our next question comes from Dawn. Dawn, you're live on the air.
Hi. I just wanted to thank you for being here today and kind of putting your feet in the fire, so I really appreciate that you're doing that. My question is, does your office have any plans to help with workforce housing issues? So what I'm thinking is that, we're looking at the millennials entering into the first-time home buyer market, and they're coming in with a large amount of student debt. There's trillions of dollars in student debt right now, and what are we going to do about that? There's already a disparity in the living wages and the home values, and we're losing quality entry-level first-time home buyer stakeholders in our community because of these barriers to home ownership. And we're talking about bringing more business to our community, but where are these people going to live? So is there anything that you're doing to address some of these barriers and issues to the workforce housing problem?
Well, a great question, Dawn. I think there's multiple different avenues of approach to address this specific problem. And of course, the problem itself is multifactorial. I mean, as you mentioned, you've got the millennials or new college graduates graduating with a degree, and right now, roughly 50% of recent college graduates can't find a job in the field in which they got their degree. So, the first thing, as I mentioned in my opening comments, the first thing is to get those jobs back and get people into jobs where they can make a wage, where they'll be able to afford a home. The second thing is the regulatory burdens that we're placing on those looking to buy homes. Whether it's the increasing amount required for a down payment, the difficulty in qualifying for a mortgage because of the fallout of the financial crisis from 2008, there are a lot of regulatory hurdles. And of course, the point that you brought up, the staggering amount of college education debt, which right now is second only to mortgage debt as the leading cause of debt in the country. And so, as a member of the Education Committee, we've been looking at the root cause of the issue, which is why has the cost of a post-secondary education increased exponentially faster than the general rate of inflation? In fact, over the last 10 years, the cost of a post-secondary education has gone up by over 100%, and inflation is nowhere near that. So people talk about the student loan indebtedness, which is a symptom of the greater problem, which is why is the cost of an education so high? And so the Education Committee is trying to address that issue. So when we put all these things together, it's a multifactorial approach that we're trying to take. As for the short term, what do you do for the workforce housing shortages? That is not something where the federal government's necessarily going to get involved. Our goal is to address the root causes and try to set an environment where folks are going to have the opportunities to get a good job, have a reasonable cost to getting a home, and making sure that they're not encumbered with a vast amount of debt once they graduate college.
Great. Thanks so much, Congressman. This telephone town hall is going great so far. Thank you for joining us tonight with Congressman Joe Heck and National Association of Realtors. Again, if you'd like to ask a question today, this afternoon, press 0 on your telephone keypad to ask a question. Press 0 if you'd like to ask a question. Our next question comes from Russell. Russell, you're live on the air.
Yeah, Congressman, thank you very much for taking the call and doing this. My clientele, a lot of them are casino workers, and a lot of them wanting to buy houses, but now their jobs are being cut to part-time because of the health care that has to be done now. These people are losing their houses and short sales, and now they can't buy a house because now they're part-time workers and no longer doing the full-time. You were talking about increasing the job stability and bringing jobs here. What are you planning to do to bring jobs here?
Well, thanks, Russell. So, first, I think when you mentioned the number of folks being cut to part-time, it's one of the unintended consequences that no one foresaw when they voted for the health care bill back in 2010, is that when you draw the line at 30 hours to define a full-time employee, as the law does, in order to be required to provide health care benefits, you see a lot of businesses scaling back to 26, 28, 29 hours. And so we're going to see people that were previously full-time employees now, as part-time employees. To address the specific jobs issues that we face in Southern Nevada, I think there's three pieces of legislation that I've worked on, and two of which that have been signed into law to help that. First is, you look at it from kind of a strategic level. What do we do to create more jobs across the country? Because more jobs across the country means more people visiting Las Vegas, which is ultimately going to result in more jobs here. So to do that, I introduced the JOLT Act, which is geared at trying to increase international travel and tourism. So as the long-haul travel market across the globe has increased over the last decade, the U.S. portion of that has actually decreased by 5%. And so international travelers on average spend $4,500 per person per week that they're here. The bill is estimated to create nationally 1.2 million jobs and bring about $860 billion into the economy just from travel and tourism. So that's looking at it from kind of the global perspective, across the country. Then look at exactly what's going on here locally. I just recently had a bill signed into law called the Three Kids Mine Act. It's a redevelopment bill for the city of Henderson. Old abandoned mine gets cleaned up, public-private partnership, no taxpayer money, estimated to create 3,000 jobs during the course of that project. Another thing is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, which is making sure that the federal workforce training dollars that are given to state and local workforce investment boards are going to train the people for the jobs of today and tomorrow, not the jobs of yesterday. I mean, a perfect example here in Southern Nevada is the construction industry, which was decimated during the recession. At that time, our construction industry was about 13% of our total workforce, which is more than 2 times, closer to 3 times the national average for construction workers. And so we have a lot of out-of-work construction guys and gals. And that level of construction will probably never come back to Southern Nevada. So they're faced with a couple of choices. Either they leave or they transition into some other type of employment. And so we want to make sure that we're training people for the jobs that will be here or are here, not the jobs that were here. I had a piece of that bill that goes to how that is done. That likewise has been passed out and signed into law. And so we're moving legislation that tries to set the conditions to create jobs. I mean, again, the government doesn't really create jobs. It's the private sector, and our job is to try to make it as easy as possible for the private sector to create those jobs. So those are just some examples of what we've done over the last year.
Perfect. Remember, folks, press 0 on your keypad if you'd like to ask a question. Our next question comes from Jenny. Jenny, you're on the air.
Hello, Congressman. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. It's a pleasure to speak with you. Big fan. Great questions, by the way. It's been very informative. There's been some really good questions, very enlightening. My question is a little more on the wake of our recent news and the safety of realtors, based on Miss Beverly Carter out of Arkansas losing her life, what I call in the line of duty, because she was showing a home to somebody who had ill intentions for her. Is there something we can do? I'm the last person that just wants to keep passing law after law after law, but I feel we really need to come up with some type of real estate protection act, a policy that we all abide by to protect us, to say, no, we cannot show somebody who is unqualified into a home. It's dangerous for us. It's dangerous for the seller to let somebody who's not even capable of buying a home into a home. Is there steps that we can see to protect us in the future for things like this that could happen and probably will happen again?
Yeah, Jenny, really great question, and certainly a tragedy that happened in Arkansas. I understand that the person in custody now has said that he last saw her 2 days ago and had nothing to do with her killing. We'll see. He's trying to claim that he had an accomplice. I don't do this. It's a great question, but I don't know if I have a great answer. I mean, certainly the idea of not showing a home to somebody who is not otherwise qualified to purchase it, I guess how would you go about determining that? Somebody calls and says, hey, I saw this street sign out, home for sale on this block, I'd like to take a look at it. How are you going to determine whether or not that person, before they even look at the home, is qualified without running into the whole possible anti-discrimination issues, not to mention the workload of determining whether or not the person's qualified to purchase that home before you even take them to see it. I mean, I think it's the idea of vigilance and safety. I mean, is it now that a realtor doesn't show a home by themselves, that you've got to go with somebody else? And most of those laws, if there were to be laws passed, would be state laws, not something that would probably come out of Washington, D.C. But I think it's certainly a tragedy in that whether it's a realtor or anybody who works on their own with the public in today's day and age just needs to be almost hyper vigilant for their own safety. So I don't know if there's any easy answers, but certainly I would implore all of the realtors that are listening in today to be cognizant of their surroundings, be cognizant of the individuals when they meet them for the first time, to show them a home, whether or not you get that feeling that something's just not right, and wait for somebody else to come or try to reschedule the showing. So sorry I don't have a better answer than that, Jenny, but thanks for being on the call.
Jenny, this is Chris with NAR, and this is something that NAR has been taking a hard look at too, not just in the wake of this incident, but over the past several months looking at realtor safety. And so I can follow up with you afterwards and give you some of the information about things that NAR is taking a look at how we might be able to make sure that agents are safe and when they're showing property.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Chris. Thanks so much, Congressman. Remember, folks, if you have a question you'd like to ask, just press 0 on your telephone keypad. You'll be directly connected to one of our staff, and they can help you out. So our next question comes from James. James in Henderson. You're live on the air.
Yeah, I've heard bringing medical school to a city helps boost the economy. Is there any talk right now of bringing a medical school to UNLV?
Well, there is actually, not only to UNLV, but you may know that there's already a medical school in Henderson at Touro University. In addition, Roseman University, which has the pharmacy school and a dental orthodontic school here, is going to be opening up a medical school over on the old campus of the Nevada Cancer Institute. But UNLV is also moving forward with bringing a publicly funded medical school hopefully to the campus, if they can find the space on campus, but to Southern Nevada. In fact, I've had conversations with the planning dean, Dean Atkinson, who's got experience in doing the same thing, starting a school from scratch elsewhere. And so what I think will be the final determinant is what will happen in Carson City when the legislature convenes in February of next year, because they're going to have to appropriate the money to move forward with developing the medical school. Certainly, Don Snyder, the president at UNLV, has said that this is his number one priority for UNLV, is to develop the medical school and to develop a whole academic medical center to go along with it. So a lot of exciting opportunities for healthcare here in Southern Nevada.
Perfect. Thanks so much, folks. So our next question comes from Debbie. Debbie in Vegas. You're on the air.
Hi, Congressman. I just wanted to ask you, how the election is going, and then what do you think your chances are of winning in this election?
Debbie, I would love to answer that, but this is an apolitical call, so I can't take any campaign questions, but if you want to shoot me an email through my website afterwards, I'd be happy to answer it.
Perfect. Okay, so our next question comes from Thad. Thad is in Henderson. Thad, you're on the air.
Hi, Congressman. I appreciate you doing this for us all. My question is, since we've gotten a little bit off real estate, but it really isn't off of real estate, is are you aware of any potential legislation that might involve an internet tax or something? Brick and mortar is just decimated and getting more so by the internet, but internet is given every a break and opportunity under the sun, and it's really killing the things that would create jobs. So your stance on that, and also just to let you know that although I didn't vote for you last time, I have come to, personally get an appreciation for you. I do agree with a lot of your stuff, and and now I am a supporter of yourself. Just to let you know that.
Well, thanks, Thad. So there is a bill that's been circulating over the last couple of years in Congress called the Marketplace Tax Fairness Act, which would require internet retailers to collect the sales tax that would normally be charged in whatever jurisdiction the sale is taking place in. It has yet to come through committee or to the floor for a vote. As you may know, I mean, the ability, quite honestly, right now the way it's set up is that if you, as an individual, make an internet purchase, theoretically, you're required to take whatever that sales tax is and remit it on your own. So this is what the Marketplace Tax Fairness Act is trying to get around, is saying, look, we'll have the retailers collect it. As you may know, that the governor struck a deal with Amazon.com, where Amazon now is actually collecting sales tax for sales here in Nevada and remitting that to the state coffer. So There is the bill that's out there, but it has not. I don't sit on the committee of jurisdiction, so it hasn't come through committee yet, and has not come through to the House floor for a vote. But there is something out there.
Great. So our next question comes from Aaron in Henderson. Aaron, you're live on the air.
Hi. Thanks for taking the question. I have a pretty big concern being from the Valley. I've lived in the Vegas Valley for the last 25 years. I sell real estate full-time for a living, and there was a report about, I'd say 6 to 8 months ago, about naturally occurring asbestos in the dust in Boulder City in the old part of southeastern Henderson. Is that being talked about? Is there any kind of conclusion to that? And then also, what about the water shortage, and what's that going to do to real estate in the future?
Well, two really important questions, Aaron. Thanks. So as for the asbestos, naturally occurring asbestos, look, there is naturally occurring asbestos throughout the Las Vegas Valley. And what happened was during the beginnings of the development for the I-11 Boulder City bypass, a group went out and did some sampling of some dirt out in that area. It was not a commissioned study by anybody. They just happened to go out there and, for whatever reason, did this on their own and found what they reported as higher than acceptable levels of naturally occurring asbestos. So that is being looked at by the Nevada Department of Transportation, who's responsible for that project. And I believe that they have gone through doing more multiple sampling in different locations to find that there is no risk from breaking the crust out there and generating the dust, as long as they keep with all the air quality control requirements for construction. But no matter where you go in the Las Vegas Valley, there is naturally occurring asbestos in the dirt. As for the water shortage, I mean that is the hugest question that we face. I mean the exponential growth throughout the Las Vegas Valley over the past 10 to 15 years, coupled with lighter than usual snowpack in the Rocky Mountains, has caused the Colorado River to dwindle and Lake Mead to sink to the point where they're now building the third straw at a lower level to be able to continue to draw the water out. I think if we only got about another 10 or 15 feet, if that, of a drop before it would be considered a drought crisis and water rationing would go into place. Part of the issue, I believe, is the requirements of the old Colorado River Compact. There's the upper basin and lower basin states. This compact was negotiated back at the turn of the century when nobody lived in Nevada, and so Nevada only gets 400,000 acre feet a year that they're able to draw off to Colorado, which is nowhere near enough to support us. And you got to go back and try to renegotiate that. Unfortunately, you can't renegotiate with states that don't want to renegotiate with you, because for us to get more, they'd have to give up some. So the Southern Nevada Water Authority has looked at other alternatives, whether it's water banking in times of excess, whether it's recharging aquifers. As you know, they're talking about trying to build a pipeline to take water from northern Nevada and the Great Basin aquifers and bring it down here. But ultimately, we're going to have a decision on whether or not, or a discussion on controlled growth, and whether or not we can continue to grow inside this bowl of the Las Vegas Valley with a dwindling water supply. So great questions, things that'll certainly need to be tackled by the state legislature and the local planning commissions.
Great question. Again, remember, folks, press 0 on your keypad if you'd like to ask a question. Our next question comes from Owana in Henderson. Owana, you're live on the air.
Hello, Congressman Heck. What I wanted to find out is, what is the political will in Congress to guard our privacy? The Snowden story has kind of died out, but our privacy is no better off than before the Snowden story broke. What's going to happen next?
Well, that's a good question, Alana. And it's interesting that that story brought a lot of, shone a light on the issue, and it's interesting because really the much bigger issue is how much of your private information is circulating out on the internet, regardless of what's being done from an intelligence perspective. I mean, you go out on the internet and you see, what you can find on individuals. We see the data breaches from credit card companies and retailers with private information being lost. So the Congress has been trying to come up with a cybersecurity type legislation that keeps a free and open internet, but yet puts certain safeguards in place to protect people's personal privacy. It was called the CISPA Act. There is political will. The issue is that it's just been difficult in getting to that point where everybody can agree on the policy and come up with something that can be passed by both the House and the Senate and signed into law by the President. So the issues of personal privacy and privacy information is certainly being discussed in multiple committees, and legislation is in the drafting stages to try to put in place the safeguards. But ultimately, it comes down to everybody making sure that their own personal information is safeguarded to their best of their ability. So appreciate the question, and other than saying we're working on it, there hasn't been much that's come out of Washington in this regard.
Great question, Oana. Our next question comes from Aldo in Las Vegas. Aldo, you're live on the air.
How you doing, Congressman?
Hi.
Good. The question's a follow-up to the water issue that was discussed, I think, in the caller before, and I just wondered if we've ever, because most of the plans that I keep hearing are pipelines bringing water from up north down to the south to help with those kind of issues. Have we ever considered, maybe participating with California in the creation of salinization plants, so that way when they draw the ocean water for every acre-feet of water that they draw from salinization plants that we participated in the construction of, we would be able to store an extra acre-feet for, southern Nevada and Nevada use?
Yeah, Aldo, it would seem like a very simple and straightforward resolution, or at least partial resolution to this problem. From what I understand, those discussions that took place previously between Nevada and California years ago is just along those same lines, is that whatever we would pay for, Nevada would pay for the plant, and whatever they were able to get from the ocean, they would let us keep from the Colorado. And at the time, the issue was that they didn't want to build desalinization plants up and down their coast. Now, I know they've put some in for themselves since that discussion, but that would be a discussion between the two governors as to whether or not that's something that would be viable. But it certainly seems like something that's straightforward and simple, which is probably why it hasn't been put into effect.
Perfect. Great question. Our next question comes from Frank in Henderson. Frank, you're live on the air.
Hi, I heard something about a 20% down payment requirement a while ago. Is that going anywhere?
Hey, Frank, I know that was talked about as part of the qualified residential mortgages. I'm not sure, quite honestly, if that's been put into place. Probably somebody else on the line might know better than I. But I know that it was something that was being discussed as part of the regulatory financial services regulatory reform.
Great question. So our last question comes from Emily in Vegas. Emily, you're on the air.
Hi, Congressman. I was just wondering if there's anything else that's going to be happening legislatively for the rest of the year.
That's a good question, Emily. Look, there certainly will be things that would have to happen in what's called the lame duck Congress post-election, between election day and the end of the year, and those things basically go to some of the tax extender policies. There's discussions about having a vote on the authorization of use of military force for what's going on in Syria. So there's still appropriation bills that need to be looked at. The continued funding of the government needs to be taken care of. So there are things that need to be done. Whether or not there's anything of substance, I think, remains a question, and I think a lot of that's going to be dictated by the outcome of November 4th. So there are certain things that must be done and will be done, but as far as grand policy, I don't think we'll see any grand policy coming out between Election Day and the end of the year.
Great question, Emily. So, Congressman, looks like we're almost out of time. Would you like to make some closing remarks before we end the call?
Sure. Again, thanks, Jordan. Thanks, everybody, for taking the time to be on the call today. Look, I appreciate what you do. I mean, everybody thinks of the Las Vegas Strip when it comes to the economic engine of this of our economy. But really, when you look at the boost to our economy through home ownership and what you do in selling homes and getting people to buy homes is just as critically important. As was mentioned, all those people working on the Strip, they need a place to live. We're going to create more jobs. They have to have homes to move into. We've got to make sure that we get Nevada back to being a home buyer's market, not a renter's market. I mean, I always say that when people when people rent a place, they maintain it because they just want to make sure they get their security deposit back. But when you buy a home, you improve it. You go out and you buy new appliances, you buy floor coverings, you buy window coverings, and all those things create additional jobs within our community. So, home ownership is really kind of at the base of the pyramid for our economy, and a lot of things grow from there, and you're a vital part of it. So thanks for what you do. Thanks for taking the time to be on the call, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you, everyone, for joining us for this call. Unfortunately, we couldn't get to every question, but if you do have any additional questions, please stay on the line. You'll be able to leave a voicemail at the end of the call, and the Congressman will be able to hear that later on today. So thank you so much for your time, and have a great night. And don't forget to stay on the line if you'd like to leave a voicemail. Have a good evening.